So as you know, we have three primary project teams at SAFE. We have education, advocacy, and greening. And this is a summary of the 2022 accomplishments, goals, and our wish list for the SAFE education team. The co-chairs are Merle Tanis and Pete Lane. All right, so what are our goals? We got together earlier in the year and set down some goals for the education team. One is to increase the organization and structure within our team, and we are working on that and we are slowly improving. The other is to expand our education team membership across all campuses, and this is very important that we have members from all of the Kendall campuses attending, at least one member from each campus attending our meetings, because one of the purposes of our meetings is to share ideas. So it is good if we are not all from the same one or two campuses when we're sharing our ideas. The other is to inform Kendall residents about the climate crisis, increasing their awareness of its urgency and encouraging them to act. The next one that we're going to be working on is equipping residents with the skills and confidence to discuss climate issues. As I'm sure you know, sometimes it's the last thing you want to bring up in a conversation. And lastly, we are going to start coordinating with the advocacy project team, because the advocacy project team puts out initiatives such as the action alert, letter to the editor, and local policy teams. And it helps if the education team can work hand in hand to provide education materials and amplify their efforts. So what have we been up to? I hope that all of you have seen one of our amazing SAFE newsletters. These are just 3 of the issues that we published in 2022. We had one in January, April, July, and one will be coming up in October. You may have seen some of the professionally printed copies that are bound with staples in the centerfold in your library, hopefully being passed around. We've been treating them a little bit like library books. You can go to safe.org/newsletter if you would like to download a digital copy. You can read it online right there. And you can even order more copies. If you would like to use more copies at your campus, you can order them. I think the minimum is only 10 copies. So it's a very nice way to do something offline and get the word out about SAFE and everything that we've been accomplishing. So as you may have seen, Earth Day was quite a fun event at all of the different Kendalls. Everyone seemed to be involved in different ways. The education team actually got together and came up with some ideas. We all told each other what we were doing on our individual campuses, posted it to the website, and hopefully some wonderful ideas came out of that. And here are just a few. This is a display case at Hanover, and that is Mary Ann Cadwallader standing in front of her magnificent creation there. It is called For the Beauty of the Earth. She added many items from nature to this display case with some information about what you can do to help with climate change. Many of the campuses had nature tours. We had native plant tours, bird watching tours, all sorts of tours, and we were happy to see this. And this is just one representative photo. This is a photo from Lathrop. They had a composting demonstration, and you can't quite see the demonstration, but that is everyone looking on and learning more about how composting is happening at Lathrop. We had many tables with information on Earth Day. This is just one small example of a reuse, recycle, and compost table at Cartmel. And lastly, at the Admiral, John Howe, our board member, and Phil Hoffman had a wonderful informational meeting. And there's Phil holding up one of our newsletters. So we are so thankful to them for getting the word out about SAFE. All right, so moving on, we also had a book club that has met 4 times in early 2022. The books that we covered were Saving Us and All We Can Save. And the plan now is we'd like to expand this out to what we call topic meetings, which will include not only books, but speakers, film, articles, and more. And this is in development. So stay tuned for the next iteration of these once a month meetings that will cover topics and also include books. So finally, what does the education team need? Well, in order for SAFE to be viable, we need strong project teams. So I would strongly urge you, if you're from one of these campuses, to look for one member that can attend one meeting a month for an hour and hopefully identify a backup from the Admiral, Collington, Ithaca, Lathrop, and Oberlin Kindles. If you are on the education team and you get the invitations, you might not be able to always attend. So we're looking for somebody who's a more regular member and can send somebody in their place. And of course, many hands make light work, and we need people to take minutes at the meeting. And this could just be an hour of your time at the meeting to jot down the minutes, type up a draft for review, and forward it to me for circulation. So maybe just an hour and a half of your time. We can use an advocacy team liaison to attend 1 hour a month of the education team meeting, 1 hour a month at the advocacy team, and then report back what each team is doing as a summary. We could use a few volunteers to perform member outreach and make calls before our meetings. And finally, if you would rather not attend meetings, but would like to be behind your computer, I can always use tech help. And an example of that would be a website editor that posts news items like in a blog style, or a news assistant to review article submissions. So we have all kinds of needs, and whatever you can do, you can reach out to me and let me know. I have a half hour, I have an hour a month or 2 hours, and I can find something that you would like to do to help us out. And here is my information. I'm sure you all have my email. My phone number is in my signature, and you can always go to safe.org to learn more and help us out. All right, so I am going to stop there, and then I'm going to hand it over to Ted Woolner from Oberlin, who is going to be presenting the advocacy team presentation, and then I will share my screen again. And Ted, are you ready?
Ready.
Yes, absolutely. All right.
Here we go. A quick overview of the advocacy team's accomplishments, goals, and wish lists for 2022. Next slide, if you would, Michelle. We are governed by the two major mission goals of SAFE. Of course, those are to reduce carbon emissions 50% by 2030 and get to carbon neutrality by 2050. Next slide, please.
These are some of the...
You see the kinds of things we're up against, and we're doing active battle to lessen and rid our planet of these things. Next slide, please. We adopted criteria for our action alerts. They've all been approved by the SAFE board. Of course, the action alerts need to advance one of our goals, principally the reduction in emissions and the move towards carbon neutrality. They need to target key decision makers. That could be an individual member of Congress, groups of legislators in Congress, or an administrator in the federal bureaucracy. And of course, but importantly, they have to be timely, these action alerts, which is to say, they need to go out shortly before action impends on a given bill in Congress or a regulation in the federal bureaucracy. Next slide. Here are the major action alerts we've undertaken this year so far. You'll remember back in the winter, we sent a petition to EPA Administrator Michael Regan asking for the strongest possible truck emission standards. We had a goal of 250 signatures. That goal was reached. The second petition was to the Department of Transportation to plug methane pipe leakage along the extent of the oil and natural gas pipeline infrastructure in the country. Again, the goal was 250 signatures. Again, we achieved that goal. Numbers matter bigly. And we had a letter writing campaign to support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act of 2021. 237 letters have been written so far. We're still counting, and 33 postcards, thanks to Dorothy Luciano here at Oberlin, have also been written. Next slide, if you would. We had a letter to the editor workshop In other words, how to do a letter to the editor. It's not complicated. And we now have LTE, or letter to the editor, teams active at Hanover and Oberlin, and more informally, perhaps a bit less frequently, at KLEX. We'd love to get more Kendall campuses on board the letters to the editor campaigns because, again, numbers matter. The more letters that are submitted, the more letters that are published, the more attention newspapers locally, regionally, statewide, the more they pay attention, the editors do, to a given issue, our issues. And the same thing is true for legislators, members of Congress who follow these letters. We have also just begun to set up local and state policy education initiatives to track local and particularly state legislation that may advance or impede progress on climate and environmental problems. Next slide, please. Here are the goals for 2022. We'd like active representation on the team from each Kendall. So some of us, including Oberlin, could use more membership than we've got. There are other campuses similarly positioned, namely Ithaca and the Admiral. In part to address this, George Alexander and I will be at Kendall at Ithaca, August 11th and 12th, talking about all three teams and how anyone there, any resident in Ithaca, can get on board. I just talked about the LTE and local policy teams, so I'll jump to something else that's coming in the near future, and that is getting out the vote and doing that in teams for the all-important 2022 elections in the fall. We want to increase our action alert responses to 500. Numbers matter, 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 matter. They will particularly matter when it comes to the impending vote on any reconciliation bill that might happen to emerge among the Senate Democrats later this summer, possibly in the fall. We certainly want to establish and maintain external senior living community involvements and explore partnerships with other advocacy organizations. I could be more specific about both those things, but I vowed to keep this short, and that's the end. That's all, folks.
Oh.
Except for we need doers, as Michelle emphasized, for the education team. Anybody who'd like to dive into advocacy, if only to take meeting minutes, that would be great. And there are other household tasks that very much need doing. We really need campus representatives on all the teams from all the campuses. Thanks so much.
Okay, and here's my contact information. Once again, I'm sure you all know it by now, but just to let you know, you can always reach out to me if you have any ideas or time that you can contribute to these groups. All right, that's it for advocacy, and I'm going to stop sharing and then resharing, and we're going to go to greening, and George Alexander is going to be our presenter for greening. So let me just line this up. Where are you, George? There you are. Okay, I'm going to pin you. I'm going to remove the pin from Ted, and then I'm going to share my screen. And all right, George, are you ready?
You bet. So thanks, Michelle, and thank all of you for being here today and listening to this summary of what SAFE's been doing. I'm impressed with what the other two groups have done, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the greening team and what we've been doing. Basically, what the greening team does is to help individual campuses move their campus toward net neutrality. And I think this is a really important part of what we do. The advocacy folks make sure that the structure is in place nationally and regionally for doing this. We try to make sure that it can be done locally for every campus. Next slide, please. So at the beginning of the year, we set ourselves 4 goals. I'm going to describe our actions on those goals. The first of which was that we need to focus on buildings because they account for such a big proportion of our energy use on each campus. And if we're ever going to get to neutrality, buildings are a huge part of that. The next goal that we set was to talk about the carbon neutrality roadmap, and the starting point for that is calculating carbon footprints. And the next goal is to get as many people as possible involved locally with a lot of activities that any resident can be involved with. And the fourth goal is to develop what we're calling the SAFE pathway, a set of documents that any retirement community, Kendall or not, could use to get to carbon neutrality. Next slide, please. So 2 major projects this year so far have been the creation of a carbon footprint working group, which is dedicated to trying to standardize the way each campus can calculate its carbon footprint. We've focused at this point on some software from the Department of Energy that we'll all be using to get a first step toward this. And several of the campuses are well into the implementation process for that. The importance of this is if we're going to cut our carbon footprint in half by 2030, don't we need to know what we're cutting in half? We need to know what our 100% is now, and we need to be able to track our progress. The other piece of initial work that we're doing this year is the energy audit working group. Here, what we're doing is trying to specify what would make a really great energy audit so that a given campus would know where all its energy losses and problems were. And we're putting this in terms of a request for proposal template, which could be used to request of an engineering firm the type of audit that makes sense for us. Next slide, please. So what are the greening team doing across campuses? Well, this is a list of virtually everything that we're doing that Michelle put together. On the left, we have the energy projects that you may have on your campus or someone is doing. On the right, we have the sustainable living projects that we found on the various campuses. You'll see on this list, I'm sure, a lot of things you already are doing, and probably, I hope, a lot of things that you could be doing that you would like to do and that will help you do. Next slide, please. So here, summarizing what's going on with all those projects that you saw on the previous slide. So on the left is a list of all the Kendall affiliate campuses, and across the top is the same list as you just saw on the previous slide, showing all those activities. And the check marks represent things that are happening on each campus, and the IP designation in the boxes means in progress or in planning. So you can see there's an awful lot going on, and you can also see there are a lot of empty boxes, which means there's an awful lot more that we need to get started with. Next slide, please. So in addition to the working groups that I told you about and all those activities in the table that I just showed you, there are a bunch of other things that greening has been involved with. One of them is presentations that are captured in video and that are available on the SAFE website. A couple examples shown there. Another project just getting started is collecting menus to compare what kinds of sustainable food options are available at each campus. And I think that will be an interesting one once we get a few more campuses involved. Next slide. So, and the big task that is just getting underway is this SSAFE pathway. This will consist of a collection of documents that any retirement community could use to get to net neutrality. Unfortunately, that's a very ambitious program because there's so much diversity among retirement communities. A retirement community can be a high rise, or it can be a cluster of cottages. It can have people paying their own utility bills, or it can be their utility bill can be part of the monthly bill. There can be potential for solar on their campus or no potential for solar. And so, and the list goes on. So there are so many variables that it will take a lot of work to put together a package of materials that will have everything that a given retirement community will need. To do that, we'll need a lot of authoring help. Some of this will be authoring that SAFE members can do, but not all of it. We'll need some external help with authoring too, and we'll need a lot of editing help to put it into a common format and make it presentable to our audiences. So those of you who are writers and editors, this is an opportunity to get involved with a big project that will certainly last beyond the end of 2022. We also will have to hire some outside authors to write parts of it, because I don't believe we have the people power to do all the writing ourselves. And for that, we'll need money. So we will be asking for money. We will also need help coordinating all this activity. And for that, we need more of Michelle's time. So there's a fundraising issue too. Next slide, please. So as with the other teams, we need people to help with the collection of information, dissemination of information, taking minutes and so on. As I say, we need the writers, editors, and I would be delighted to talk to people about what that will involve. And we need financial support, like I said. Next slide. So I hope you see that we have made some progress on our 4 goals for the year. We've got the energy audit work going. We've got the carbon footprint work going. We have lots of different local activities that you saw in the big table, and we are off to a good start with the SAFE Pathway project, particularly the 2 working groups. Those documents will be a big contribution to that process, but there's a long way to go there. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.